Caitlin Clark went from barely cracking a top 5 mention to sitting in the number 1 conversation. And she did it without asking anyone for permission, without a press tour, without a single soundbite begging for respect. She just played basketball, and the numbers did the talking for her. Back in July, WNBA players themselves voted on the league's best guards. And Caitlin Clark landed at number 11. 11th, behind names she was outscoring and outplaying on a weekly basis. 4th in scoring, 2nd in assists in the entire league, and somehow 11th among guards, according to her peers. That is not a stat. That is an opinion. And it was wrong the moment it was published. Players like Kelsey Plum and Jackie Young landed right behind her in that same vote, and even they would probably admit, if you caught them off guard, that the gap between 11th and where Clark actually belonged was never close to accurate. Here is the thing about disrespect like that. It does not stay buried forever. 2 weeks after that vote went public, Clark walked into a game against Seattle and dropped 45 points with 10 assists, becoming the first player in WNBA history to post a 40-point, 10-assist game in a single night. Not a good stat line. A historic one, a first ever, never been done before line that the entire league had to sit with. So while 11 players were being ranked ahead of her at her own position, Clark was quietly setting records that none of those 11 players have ever come close to touching. It is almost poetic timing, honestly. Voters cast their ballots, and within days, Clark answered with the loudest response available to her. A historic box score that nobody could spin, nobody could explain away, and nobody could argue with. And that is exactly the pattern that has followed her all season. Everybody underrates her, and then she goes out and makes the underrating look foolish within a matter of games. It happened with the preseason rankings. It happened with the guard vote. And now it is happening with the MVP race itself, where a conversation that completely excluded her a few months ago now has her name sitting right at the very top. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable for A'ja Wilson. Clark is not just showing up in the MVP conversation anymore, she is leading it. She is currently out in front of every other candidate in points generated per game, total points scored, and assists, ahead of her own teammate Olivia Miles, who sits in second place, just 34 points behind her. She is ahead of Kelsey Mitchell. And she is ahead of Wilson. Let that sink in for a second, because it gets even wilder when you factor in one detail nobody is talking about enough. Clark has played roughly a game and a half fewer than the players she is beating in these categories. She is doing more in less time than everyone chasing the same trophy. Think about what that actually means. It is one thing to lead a stat category when you have played every single game and logged every single minute available to you. It is a completely different thing to lead it while missing time, while other players are getting extra games to pad their totals, and still coming out ahead anyway. That is not luck. That is not a hot stretch. That is a player operating on a different level than everyone else circled around her, doing more damage in fewer minutes than her closest competitors can manage with a full workload. And it does not stop at the box score. Clark now ranks 4th all-time among more than 850 guards in career points with 690 total. A number most players spend a full decade chasing, and she is doing it years into her career, not decades. On top of that, she leads the league in makes from behind the arc, the exact shot that defines modern offense, the shot every team builds its spacing around. And this season alone, she hit a career-high 32 mid-range shots, more than her first 2 seasons combined. That is not a small jump. That is a player expanding her entire game in real time, adding a shot that was not even part of her arsenal before, and mastering it well enough to blow past her previous 2 years put together in a matter of months. Think about what it actually takes to add a shot like that mid-career. Most players spend an entire offseason retooling their footwork, drilling the same pull-up jumper thousands of times in an empty gym, hoping it translates once the lights come on and a defender is closing out at full speed. Clark did that work And now defenses cannot simply sag off her and dare her to shoot from mid-range anymore, because she has proven she will make them pay for it. ESPN has also flagged something that deserves its own spotlight. Clark generated over 40 points created in a single game earlier this season, the most by any player in WNBA history. Not just this season's history, league history. That number accounts for the points she scored plus the points she directly set up for teammates. And it is the kind of stat that measures true offensive gravity, not just individual scoring. It tells you she is not padding a stat sheet by chucking shots. She is running an entire offense through her hands and making every single possession more dangerous because she touched the ball.